Hi, this is Kaleah, and I'm going to continue with talking about the Twinflame mythology that I started in my last segment. The idea of having a twin flame, someone who universally is ideal for you, that other half in a sense, that other soul that you possibly contracted to come into this world to meet. So you're divinely destined to meet this person. And it's a very romantic notion, but it's a notion that also gets us into trouble. So I want to break it down a bit. And it's not that I want to say that there's no such thing as twin flames. That mythology is out there for a reason. But we tend to always look outside of ourselves to be fulfilled, to be made whole, to be made happy. And if you think about the notion of a twin flame, you can see that there's a masculine and there's a feminine. So two flames, and when they come together, they make one flame. Well, I choose to look at it as a divine masculine and a divine feminine that is within us. It's our masculine principle, our masculine energy, and our feminine principle, our feminine energy coming together within us to create an inner flame that is really powerful. And when we have this inner flame, we can burn strongly, we can burn brightly within ourselves. So we don't have the need for somebody out there to come along and rescue us, make us whole in any way. Now, in all fairness, when I talk to people that believe they've met their one, their soulmate, their twin flame, they feel that they're already whole. They don't necessarily feel like a part of them was missing when they met that person. But here's what happens with the idea of the twin flame, is that people who talk about twin flames say that twin flames are very challenging relationships. They're very difficult relationships. And so they challenge us on a very deep level. We may not realize the emptiness we feel, the deep loneliness, the deep disconnection from source until we meet this person, until we bring this person into our hearts and our souls. And then suddenly there's a feeling of connection and completeness that we may have not felt before or for a very long time. So it can be that feeling, as I talked about before, of coming home. But we also have to look how we ourselves idealize the other. In a sense, we might put the other on a pedestal. We might see the perfection in them and even superimpose a fantasy onto that person so that we're projecting a fantasy and living out that fantasy instead of seeing the truth, instead of seeing the reality of who a person is. And that means to see beneath the surface, to see the wounds, and see if those wounds, because we all have a different level of woundedness, but to see if those wounds are something that we can deal with in our lives. Can we handle the other's wounds? Or let's put it this way, can the other handle their own wounds? Or do they need to project onto you and make it about you? And we have to ask ourselves the same question. Can we handle what gets triggered within ourselves? Or do we need to project it onto the other? So this ideal of the twin flame is a belief that once we find that person, and connect with that person, that we're made whole, that we don't have to do all that work. And I know with the twin flame mythology, there is a lot of work that has to be done that we talk about, that twin flame exposes our shadow, what within us needs to be brought to light. So what if that was the only purpose of that person that we assign the twin flame ideal to? What if that person's purpose in our life was to come in and shake up the jar, so to speak? Get that stuff that's been lodged within us, that has not come up to the surface to be healed, to bring all that up so that we can heal it, so that we can learn to love ourselves on another level. Because the truth of the twin flame journey is that it's a journey of the self to the self, to meet the self, to be in union with self and the divine light, the source of life. It's not about anybody outside of ourselves. That's a very romantic notion. But if we do not find within ourselves that wholeness, we're always going to be looking for it out there in another person, and we will always be disappointed. Now, getting involved with people who are toxic or narcissistic, that's the worst for most of us, because that person is mirroring to us all this pain, core trauma. And yes, it very well may be their own core pain and core trauma that they're projecting on to you, onto their partner. But if we don't have our own core pain, if we don't have our own core trauma, it won't have anywhere to stick. The fact that we let it in, that we accept it in, that we buy the story, that there's something deeply flawed and inadequate within ourselves. It gives all that stuff that's projected to us a place to stick. And then long after that person's gone, we're still dealing with it. And we think we might be just dealing with that person, dealing with trying to get them out of our lives energetically. But there's something within us that's still there, that's still stuck, that we have to work with. And that's our own core pain and our own core trauma. So at this point, it's not really about anybody else. And the more you focus outside of yourself and you're still focusing on, I'm in separation with my twin. When you say I'm in separation with my twin, we're not talking about somebody out there. We really aren't. Because that idea that you're separate from your twin, that he's out there or she's out there in the world without you, and that you're working towards being in union with that person again, is unrealistic. Because if that person is unhealed or narcissistic, then they're probably not going to come back to you in a whole healed manner. Yeah, you might get sucked back in, you might do another dance, but it's not going to be a dance based in wholeness and true happiness. That can only be found within the self. So the twin flame in separation is really you being separate from the God within, from source, from your own divine light. And that's where the work is. So we have to let go of this idea that there's just one person out there in the world that's ideally suited to be with you. I heard Aaron Dougherty, who has a YouTube channel, he had a video on twin flames that was really good and talked about how when we have the idea that there's just one person for us, it creates scarcity. And what happens when there's scarcity? Then we become more desperate. We want to hold on to this one thing. We don't want to let it get away because there's only one. How does that serve us? I don't believe it serves us. There's others that basically say everybody is our twin flame, everybody is our soulmate, in that they reflect something to us that is in our own soul. Whether it is our light, whether it is our core pain, that everybody out there is a reflection of sorts. But of course, we're not going to feel deeply connected to everybody. And I think part of this twin flame mythology comes from when we feel so deeply connected to somebody that we're looking for some kind of a word to describe what that connection is. So the idea of twin flame, or the idea of a soulmate, somebody that you have this really deep, powerful connection with, can make sense for a lot of people. It made sense for me. I had to go through this. And I've had to embrace the truth that I cannot be searching for anybody outside of myself. I've got to work to be the one that I want to attract in my life, to be that person, to realize that there's no magical cure out there, there's no person out there that's going to be ideally suited for me. It doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that I can have amazing connections with, but we've all got to look deeper at those connections. What are those connections based in? And when we're looking at the codependent empath connection with the narcissist, we're looking at a dynamic that is based on a wound mate situation. We're both wounded in some way or highly sensitive. Like in the case of the empath is highly empathic and sensitive, and they get into this dynamic of taking care of people that are hurt, which is a codependent trait. So we've got to look at the toxicity, the lack of health in some of these dynamics, and work on improving those things within ourselves that keep us stuck in these toxic or unhealthy dynamics. The narcissist is never going to be your twin. And I'm not saying that somebody else that's not narcissistic would be. Because remember, you are your own twin. You've got that divine masculine, divine feminine working within you, dancing within you. So it's your work to find this flame within yourself and not assign it to another. And that's really the work here. It is really the work here. I'm really excited about this work and excited to talk more about this topic because I feel it's so important in this day and age. There's a lot of information circulating out there on twin flames. Some of that information you may resonate with, but as I talked about before, a lot of people are getting involved in narcissistic relationships and believing this person is their twin. I watch the videos, I see the comments, and this is dangerous for you. It's not healthy because it keeps you hooked to that person through a fantasy. And if you want to unhook, you have to return to yourself. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share. And that really helps my channel, which is new and budding again because I've been away from it for a while. It helps it to be found. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.